Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to discuss the shape of the sun, which debunks the flashlight sun myth. One of the problems most globe earth adherents run into is the fact that those promoting the flat earth model almost never stay on one point. They argue by quantity rather than quality of ideas. As soon as you point out how impossible one of their assertions is, they change to another assertion, ignoring the fact that their first one was destroyed. They never run out of ideas, because once you run the gauntlet of their favorite myths, they just return to the old ones that have already been debunked and run through them again. This is an indication of people who start with an idea and then set out to prove that it is right, rather than letting the facts determine what idea should be accepted. Reason dictates that evidence should point towards an explanation, and therefore the explanation is derived by observing the evidence. But they start by assuming the world is flat and then try to force the evidence to fit. A model or a hypothesis should predict what new evidence will be found, and if it is a good model, it will predict successfully. And yet the flat earth model can't even explain what we see, let alone predict what new discoveries we will come across in the future. The topic of this video arose when I posed this question to a viewer who calls himself Saucebands. If the world were flat, how could there be daylight shining brightly on half the surface of the earth and it be dark night on the other half? He came back with a rather interesting reply. He said that the sun was not a ball floating over the plane of the earth, but rather more like a flashlight shining down on only part of the earth. So how would that work? Picture a flashlight way up in the sky, shining down on the earth. The sun, we see, appears to rise in the east, and then it moves upwards from the horizon. But first, please note that the light from this flashlight, since it is not visible at all at night, must be blocked somehow by its shape or its housing if it has one. It can't just be a disk in the air moving around, or you could see it edge on all 24 hours every day. Instead, once the sun disappears over the western horizon, there is no light visible at night from the sun whatsoever, and please note that at no point in the sky are the stars occulted or blocked by the nighttime sun's dark housing. The sun and all its flashlight hardware completely and utterly disappears until the next morning when it magically arises again in the east. You can calculate where that black object should be, but when you look at that spot in the sky, there is no black shape blocking out stars where the flashlight is illuminating the other half of the world. The only way that would be possible is if the stars were between us and the flashlight. However, in daylight, the stars never block out little dark dots on the sun's surface, which you would expect since they appear to be dimmer than the sun. If you assumed that they are actually brighter than the sun, they would show up as bright glitter points in front of the sun, but they don't do that either. And finally, the stars are clearly not all the same brightness level, and some are much brighter than others. Therefore, it would be impossible for all the stars to be exactly the same brightness as the sun. The simple fact that at night the sun completely disappears creates insoluble problems for the flashlight myth. Another problem that this story runs into is that when the sun rises and sets, you see what appears to be a disk, undistorted but partially blocked by the horizon. As the sun rises, you see more and more of the disk, but what you see is always part of a circular shape, not an ellipse. The sun is never an ellipse in the sky. However, if the sun were a flashlight moving overhead, the land area directly under the sun would see a circle, but those everywhere else on Earth that is in daylight would have to see varying degrees of an ellipse shape. Think of a frisbee flying across a field, where the guy throwing it is on one side of you and the guy catching it is on the other side of you, and they are tossing it so that the disc flies directly over your head. You would see the disc leave the hand of the tosser as a very sharply elongated ellipse. As the disc moves towards you, it would become more and more circular until when it is right over you, it is a perfect circle, only to start becoming elliptical once more as it moves towards the receiver. And of course, there is the problem of the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. If you are north of the Tropic of Cancer or south of the Tropic of Capricorn, this flashlight will never actually be directly overhead, and that means it will never ever appear to be a full circular disc, but it would always be an ellipse. And yet, even at the North Pole, the sun, way down on the southern horizon, is a full, round, circular disc. If the sun were a flashlight, this would not be possible. As you can see in this diagram, those who are standing to the east of the current sun's apparent position will see an ellipse, not a circle. If someone were to suggest that the flashlight were only a bulb that radiates in all directions equally, then it would be impossible to have a night at all, because the sun would always be visible everywhere on a flat plane. Therefore, either it is not at all like a flashlight, or it must appear to be an ellipse most of the time. To those to the west of the sun's current position in the sky, as the sun moves overhead, it would become more and more circular until at its zenith it is fully round. Either the shape must change, which observation tells us clearly is not the case, or you would be able to see the sun all day and all night. Now, this is not a problem for the globe Earth model, as you can see. The sun is a ball in space, and it is forever shining. When you can see it at all, it will be a circle and never appear to be an ellipse, even if it is low on the horizon, or it never actually moves directly overhead because your location is too far north or south for it to reach you. The sun is there, and the spinning globe allows you to get a view of it for half the time. But once the Earth rotates such that the sun disappears over the horizon, behold, you only see stars, because even though the light of the sun is still moving past you out into the dark sky, there is nothing, other than perhaps the moon or one of the planets orbiting the sun, that will reflect some of that light back to us to see. This is only one of the show-stopping problems with the flashlight sun myth. If you have been lied to by a flat earther about the way the sun works, I hope that you can toss that fable aside and face the truth. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Even if you disagree, it will give me something to discuss in future videos. If you enjoyed the video, please click like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you click on the bell, you will also receive notifications when I put up a new video. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.